Take a deep breath. Settle in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping away from the noise, the notifications, and that endless rush of our daily routines to explore something incredibly profound. I want you to imagine a vast, dimly lit room. You're standing right in the center of it, and you believe you're completely free. You can walk anywhere, look anywhere, choose absolutely anything. But as the light slowly shifts, you start to notice something terrifying. You're actually covered in invisible threads. We think of ourselves as the most liberated generation in human history, right? Yet beneath the surface, there's a deep psychological heaviness we all carry. Today, we're unpacking a profound spiritual insight that completely shatters our modern understanding of freedom. It's the most painful paradox of modern life. We have endless choices. We can live anywhere, be anyone, consume literally anything at any hour of the day. So why are we drowning in anxiety? Why does modern life often feel so impossibly empty? Well, ancient spiritual insights offer a pretty chilling answer. Our entire concept of freedom is fundamentally flawed. We mistake having a lot of choices for actual liberation. But in reality, we're wandering through our lives in invisible chains, burdened by a deep psychological debt we can barely even understand, let alone articulate. There's a heartbreaking reality we have to face here. We've voluntarily built our own prisons. Think about the smartphone. Sure, we're free to browse the entire internet, but try taking a phone away from a teenager and watch the sheer panic, the emotional breakdown. That is not freedom. That's captivity to a screen. We're hostage to social media validation, obsessively chasing that perfect aesthetic dictated by Instagram and falling into absolute despair when our reality inevitably falls short. We desperately want people to respect us, to notice us, and so we spend our lives trapped in the prison of other people's opinions. We created these cages, walked right inside, and locked the doors ourselves. Our modern culture preaches a very specific type of freedom. It's the freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want, completely free from any consequences. But true reality? It's vastly different. Consider the daily routine of many corporate professionals who admit the hardest part of their job is simply getting ready. Why? Because they're forced to wear uncomfortable clothes and present themselves in a very specific way just to be taken seriously and achieve success. They are entirely captive to a cultural standard. They're slaves to expectations, to their own egos, and to biological dependencies. We're bound by these forces far more deeply than we ever want to admit. Okay, let's dive into this because this is where the spiritual insight becomes absolutely fascinating. Let's look at a specific verse from the Quran, Surah Al-Mudaththir, and zero in on an ancient Arabic word, rahina. It translates to collateral, a pledge, or a hostage. In ancient times, it was a physical item, like a ring, handed over to someone until a debt was settled. The profound philosophical claim being made here is that every single human soul is currently rahina. You are collateral. You are literally held as a hostage by your own actions. To really grasp this ancient concept, think of a very modern analogy. If you want to rent a car, you might have to leave your passport as security. Or if you check into a hotel room, they require a credit card deposit, maybe $300, just in case you damage the room. They hold your money hostage. Only when you check out and they verify you haven't destroyed the place do you actually get your deposit back. Well, your very soul is the passport. Your soul is the deposit. It's being held in captivity by the divine, waiting to see how you will act in this world. Your actions are the only currency that can buy your passport back. And this brings us to a devastating philosophical tension. We like to think we're born at a neutral zero, a completely blank slate where we just build our lives upwards. But the spiritual reality presented here argues the exact opposite. Every human being starts in a state of loss. We begin our existence in captivity. We're already heavily in spiritual debt from the very moment we gain consciousness and start making flawed choices. We don't start as completely free individuals. We start as prisoners who actually have to earn their way out. Visualize it this way. With every poor choice, every lie, every single moment we give in to addiction or cruelty, an invisible thread attaches to us. Over the years, these threads become thousands of heavy chains pulling us down into a dark, suffocating abyss. We're constantly writing in a ledger, and for many of us, the balance is deep, deep in the red. We're chained to our mistakes, dragging the weight of our past actions through every moment of our lives. The prison walls aren't made of stone, they're made of our own misdeeds. So this brings us to a really devastating question. If our souls are collateral and we're deeply in debt, covered in all these invisible chains, how do we possibly escape? If the price of ultimate spiritual freedom requires perfectly clean actions, well, we're in serious trouble because human beings are inherently flawed.
Even our best, most sincere good deeds are often distracted, imperfect, and tainted by ego. How can we ever possibly buy our way out when our currency is so deeply flawed?
Consider the sheer mathematics of it. Think about earthly real estate. A person can work incredibly hard for an entire lifetime, 40 or 50 years of grinding labor, and they might barely be able to afford a nice apartment in New York. Now compare that to the heavens, eternal mansions, infinite beauty that lasts literally forever. If an entire lifetime of perfect earthly work can't even buy a temporary earthly apartment, how could our flawed, distracted prayers, where we're maybe 25% focused on a good day, possibly purchase eternal paradise? It's a logical paradox. The price is infinitely too high.
This creates a major crisis, and humanity usually falls into one of two dangerous illusions to cope with it. The first illusion is pride. My deeds are enough. I'm a good person. I earn my way. But as we just saw, mathematically, that's literally impossible. Your deeds cannot buy eternity. The second illusion is complacency. God is merciful, so my deeds don't matter at all. I can do whatever I want, and he'll just forgive me. But using divine mercy as a blank check for laziness is a tragic misunderstanding of faith. It completely strips your life of all responsibility and meaning.
So what's the answer? This reveals the true balance, what we can call the architecture of grace. It's a brilliant four-step process. First, we acknowledge our captivity, our debt. Second, we make the step forward. We offer our small, flawed, but totally sincere good deeds. Third, and this is the absolute secret, comes the multiplication. God doesn't treat it as a one-to-one transaction. He takes your small, 25% focused effort and exponentially multiplies it through his mercy to cover that massive cost. He doesn't require perfection. He just requires sincere effort. And that multiplication is what finally leads to step 4, liberation. But what if you feel like you're just way too far gone? Imagine your spiritual bank account isn't just a little overdrawn. Imagine it sits at negative 10 million. This represents the crushing psychological weight of a soul that has spent years spiraling into spiritual debt. Years of addiction, of hurting others, of running away from the light. You look at that massive negative number and the despair just sets in. You feel that heavy, suffocating ache in your chest. You think, there's absolutely no way I can ever do enough good deeds to balance this out. I'm trapped in this prison forever. But watch how the divine responds to that utter despair. The divine says, just turn back. Take one sincere step. Commit to a single genuine act of Tawbah, which means repentance or returning. And when you do that with a shattered but sincere heart, God doesn't ask you to pay back the 10 million. He simply multiplies that massive negative debt by 0. Instantly, the slate is wiped entirely clean. The impossible debt just vanishes in the blink of an eye. From that moment of 0, your actual life begins. And here is the incredibly hopeful realization. Your deeds break the chains. You are no longer powerless. Every time you choose to tell the truth when it's hard, every time you lower your gaze or swallow your anger or help someone out in the dark, with every single sincere choice to do what's right, one of those invisible threads snaps. You're actively participating in your own rescue. You're dismantling your prison piece by piece. Notice this specific terminology used to describe these liberated people. Ashab al-Yamin, the people of the right hand. Throughout history, and deeply within Islamic symbolism, the right hand is the hand of honor. It's the hand you use to make a contract, to shake on an agreement, to give an oath. The people of the right hand are those who remembered the original contract they made with the divine. They are the ones who act with integrity, who keep their promises, and who successfully break their chains. This brings our cinematic journey full circle to the ultimate truth about human nature. A human being is fundamentally designed to submit to something. You really can't escape it. You will either be a slave to the world, trapped in a miserable cycle of chasing fashion, money, your own toxic ego, and the fleeting validation of other people, or you choose to be a slave to Allah, to the divine. And the beautiful paradox is exactly this. Submitting to the divine is the only thing that actually grants you total liberation from all those crushing earthly expectations. Let those words really wash over you. To be a slave of Allah means to be free from everything else. This is the absolute pinnacle of spiritual awakening. It means no corporation, no social media algorithm, no societal pressure, and no human being holds power over your worth anymore. Your soul is no longer collateral to the chaotic demands of the modern world. By submitting to the one who created the heavens and the earth, you finally sever the heavy chains of anxiety and expectation. You step out of the dark room and into the divine light. We've reached the end of this explainer.
The illusions have been stripped away. You know now that you are bound by invisible threads, and you know exactly how to break them. The chains are yours to sever. So as you step back into the noise of your everyday life, I want to leave you with this single, echoing question to linger in the silence. Whose slave will you choose to be today?
We have created prisons for ourselves that were, never actually necessary. We've willingly made ourselves hostages. And I think the most terrifying part of it all, we are willing to do absolutely anything just to remain locked inside those cells.
Yeah, it really is. It's the ultimate quiet tragedy of the human condition. I mean, we decorate our cages and then we just call it freedom.
Exactly. And I want you, the person listening to this right now, to just pause for a second. Like, really look around at your life. Look at your anxieties, your daily routines, the things you stress over the absolute second you wake up.
That tightness in your chest when you look at your phone.
Right, that exact tightness. I want you to ask yourself a really uncomfortable question. Maybe, honestly, the most important question you'll ever ask. Are you actually free, or are you just comfortably captive?
A really chilling thought to sit with.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you and I, we live in a society that constantly preaches liberation, autonomy, the absolute right to do whatever you want, whenever you want.
But then you look at the reality.
Yeah, exactly. When you peel back the layers of our modern psychology, when you look at the anxiety rates, the burnout, the deep, pervasive loneliness, you start to see the bars of the cage. We are running on treadmills, completely convinced we are exploring the world.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive today. We're exploring this profound, deeply unsettling, but ultimately beautiful psychological and spiritual reality. It's a concept that is actually hidden within just 2 verses of an ancient text.
Surah Al-Mudaththir from the Quran.
Yes, exactly. And our mission today isn't to give you some dry history lesson. It's to unravel this illusion of modern freedom. We want to explore the hidden emotional patterns of your daily suffering.
And really reveal how our deepest, most paralyzing anxieties are, well, they're actually symptoms of spiritual captivity.
So let's establish the tone for this right away. This isn't a theological lecture. Think of this conversation as a mirror.
A mirror held up to your ego. Yeah, to your loneliness, and to that exhausting search for inner peace that, let's be honest, so many of us are quietly, desperately struggling with every single day.
So to ground this, let's start with a real story. Because the research we pulled together for this begins with a narrative that feels almost like, the opening scene of a really emotional indie film.
Oh, the Dallas story, yeah.
Right. It starts in Dallas, Texas. The seeker whose notes we are examining today is leaving a local center, just going about his day, and he runs into an elderly Iraqi grandmother.
Just a very human, spontaneous interaction.
Yeah, the kind we usually just rush past in our modern lives. She needs a little bit of help with something mundane. He assists her, and they just start talking. And it turns out she's a master calligrapher.
Which is incredible.
Right. She has spent her entire life perfecting this ancient, incredibly difficult art form of Arabic calligraphy. So he invites her and her son to a local educational campus. He takes them to one of the main structural pillars in the building.
A pillar that, every single student, every single visitor is going to walk past day in and day out.
And he asks her to paint some calligraphy on it, to leave a permanent mark. She asks him, "What do you want me to write?"
Out of all the verses.
Right. Out of all the beautiful, uplifting, comforting verses he could have chosen, he chooses the 38th ayah of Surah Al-Mudaththir.
Which translates roughly to, every soul for what it has earned will be retained.
Every soul for what it has earned will be retained. Now, I have to be honest here. When I first read that in our notes, my immediate reaction was anxiety.
Yeah, it's heavy.
It is deeply intimidating. Why put that specific, slightly terrifying verse on a pillar to be the first thing people see when they walk into a building to learn?
Well, I think it's because that single sentence completely shatters our default assumption about human existence.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to look at the specific Arabic word used in the verse to really understand the weight of it.
Okay, lay it on me.
The word is ran, or in the specific grammatical form used in the verse, rehina.
And the linguistic breakdown of that word is where this whole concept really just blew my mind.
Yeah, because ran doesn't just mean a vague poetic state of being tied to something, or like having a cosmic debt. It is a very specific, cold, transactional word.
Like a legal term.
Exactly like a legal term. It means a hostage. It means a pledge. It means collateral.
Collateral, like literal financial collateral.
Precisely that. It is the physical thing you hand over to a lender to guarantee that a debt will be paid or a condition will be met. The verse isn't saying you might be held accountable on some philosophical level.
Right.
It is stating, as a matter of cosmic fact, that your very soul is currently functioning as collateral.
Let me try to map this onto something we all experience, because the analogies we found really helped me visualize the actual mechanism here. Imagine you travel to another country. You want to rent a car to explore.
Okay, classic scenario.
You go up to the counter, they slide the keys across the desk, but they say, okay, we need your passport. They literally hold your passport hostage until you bring that car back in one piece.
The passport is the collateral.
Right. You can drive wherever you want. You have autonomy. But you are not leaving the country until the conditions are met.
The mechanism is exactly the same. But the terrifying shift here is you are the passport.
Man, I am the passport.
You are the thing being held in the vault.
Or, think about checking into a hotel. You check into a nice place, and what's the very first thing the person at the front desk does?
They ask for a credit card.
Exactly. They put a $300 hold on it for incidentals. That money is frozen, it's locked, it's held hostage. The hotel is essentially saying, we are keeping this collateral until you prove, at checkout, that you haven't smashed the television or set a towel on fire.
Right. The $300 is Ryan.
Yes. But take that hotel analogy and scale it up to the cosmos, to the scale of eternity. You, your consciousness, your essence, you are the deposit.
And this is where we really have to discuss the grammatical nuance of the word rahina, because it explains the how and the why of this captivity. In Arabic grammar, the word ends with a ta marbuta.
I want you to break that down for me, because I don't want us to just skip over the technical parts. Why does a single letter change the meaning so drastically?
Well, in Arabic, the ta marbuta often indicates that a concept isn't just an abstract idea. It means it is a single, tangible, physical instance of that idea. It grounds the concept in physical reality.
Okay, so it makes it real.
Exactly. So the soul isn't just metaphorically bound in some abstract philosophical spreadsheet in the sky. It is physically, tangibly handed over as a pledge.
Oh, wow.
Imagine taking a heavy, solid gold ring off your finger and physically placing it into the hands of a pawnbroker. You feel the weight leave your hand. You see it locked in the glass case.
That's a visceral image.
That physical reality of an object placed in someone else's absolute custody. That is the linguistic reality of your soul described in this verse.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate, because this feels incredibly bleak. Are you saying a newborn baby is a hostage?
I know, it sounds harsh.
It does, because our modern Western philosophy is the exact opposite. We view a newborn baby as the ultimate blank slate, like a beacon of pure, unadulterated freedom. We celebrate birth as the beginning of absolute liberty.
It definitely sounds harsh to our modern ears. But let's look at the mechanics of what this verse is actually claiming. It is an inversion of that romanticized Western philosophy.
Okay.
The starting point of human life is not absolute liberty. We are born into a deficit. We possess the freedom of choice, absolutely. You can choose what to do today, but we absolutely do not possess the freedom from consequences.
So the holding cell isn't a physical room with iron bars. The holding cell is the inescapable reality of consequence.
Exactly. Every single action, every decision, every word you speak is a transaction. You're born into the custody of your own existence, and you're either spending your time working to pay off the ransom and free yourself.
Or you're adding padlocks to your own cell door.
Precisely. You're just reinforcing the cage.
It's a paradigm shift that genuinely makes my stomach drop. You aren't starting at zero, casually working your way up a ladder of self-actualization. You are starting in the negative. You are starting as collateral, and you have to earn your release.
And if we transition this from a high-level cosmic theological concept down to raw, waking, daily human psychology, it explains so much of our modern existential dread.
Let's do that. Let's drag this right down to earth, because someone listening right now might say, look, I don't feel like a hostage. I woke up today in a comfortable bed. I chose what coffee to drink. I chose what deep dive to listen to. I'm a free person.
Right, the illusion of mundane choices.
Yeah. But the psychological argument here is that we are already prisoners to our deeds, to our addictions, and to our emotional dependencies.
We are held hostage by the very things we are convinced give us our freedom.
The obvious examples are physical substances, right? Alcohol, drugs. We all understand how a substance becomes a warden. But the research we're looking at points out things that are far more insidious because they're perfectly socially acceptable.
Like screens. The modern digital prison.
Exactly. The smartphone is the perfect test case for this illusion of freedom. Think about a teenager with a smartphone. Or, honestly, think about yourself.
Right, let's not pretend adults are immune.
Oh, we are absolutely not. But society looks at a teenager with a phone and calls it freedom. They have the entirety of human knowledge, endless entertainment, the ability to communicate with anyone on Earth right in their pocket.
They are free to click whatever they want, whenever they want.
But our notes propose a brutal, illuminating stress test for this so-called freedom.
The withdrawal test.
Yes. I want you to imagine taking that phone away from a 14-year-old. Don't even punish them. Just say, I'm going to put this in a drawer for 48 hours. What happens? What is the physiological and emotional response?
Well, it is rarely a calm, rational, okay, I'll go read a book response.
It's a complete emotional breakdown. It's hysteria, it's rage, it's panic. They pace the room, their heart rate elevates, they feel a phantom vibration in their pocket.
Yeah, that phantom buzz is so telling.
And that visceral, explosive reaction reveals the ugly underlying truth. They are not free users of a digital tool. They are captives undergoing psychological withdrawal. The device is the warden, the apps are the cell, and the dopamine is the lock.
And this raises an incredibly important question for all of us. What happens when you remove the object of your focus? The panic that ensues, that tightening in your chest when your phone battery hits 1%, that is the clanking of your chains.
Wow. The clanking of your chains.
It proves you were never free. You were just a very compliant, heavily sedated prisoner.
But I want to take this even deeper, because it's easy to point at a teenager on TikTok and say, look at the prisoner. What about the prisons that don't look like addictions? What about the invisible emotional cages we build out of our own insecurities?
Those are, without a doubt, the most secure prisons of all, because you don't even know you're in them. You think you're the architect of a fortress, but you're actually the inmate.
There is a fascinating psychological profile we came across in the source material, using the story of Prophet Yusuf's brothers. Joseph and his brothers, a story familiar across the Abrahamic traditions.
Yeah, very universal story.
Now, these brothers weren't addicted to a substance. They weren't scrolling on smartphones. They were addicted to a metric. They were addicted to the need for love.
They were held hostage by their desperate need for validation from their father.
And the analogy used to describe this is so brilliant and so modern. It says they treated their father's heart like it had a health bar in the video game Mortal Kombat.
A zero-sum game of emotional survival.
Yes, they were constantly, obsessively monitoring this invisible meter. Their logic was, if Yusuf gets 10% of Dad's love, my health bar drops by 10%.
If Yusuf gets a beautiful coat, I take damage.
Exactly. I must destroy Yusuf to replenish my meter. They demanded to know who was loved more. They were paralyzed, driven to horrific, violent acts, throwing their own brother into it, well, not by an external dictator, but by an internal psychological addiction to validation.
Which perfectly illustrates the tragedy of the ego. The ego is the ultimate warden. We see this all the time today. People whose entire existence is a prison constructed out of the demand, respect me.
We all know someone like this, and let's be totally honest, we've probably been this person at some point in our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the person who walks into a room, and if someone doesn't greet them first or doesn't use the right honorific, their entire day is ruined.
Just completely derailed.
They spend their hours constantly monitoring how others look at them. They analyze the tone of voice in a short email. They obsess over perceived slights. Why didn't they reply immediately? Did they read my message and ignore it? Do they not know who I am?
It sounds utterly exhausting. It's like running a marathon in your mind every single day just to maintain a fragile self-image.
It is the absolute definition of exhaustion, because they are completely unfree. By demanding respect from everyone, they have essentially handed the keys to their emotional well-being to every single person they interact with.
That is such a profound way to look at it.
If your happiness depends on how the barista speaks to you, the barista is your master. And this is where we have to ask you, the listener, to look in that mirror again. How much of your daily stress, your chest-tightening anxiety, the things that keep you awake at 2 a.m., is really just you rattling the bars of an invisible cage you built to protect your own pride?
Man, rattling the bars of a cage you built to protect your own pride. I really want you to sit with that. Because modern culture tells us that demanding respect, asserting our ego, curating a flawless image, We are told that is freedom.
Right. Be your own boss, build your brand.
We are told to be the main character. But what this philosophy is revealing is that trying to be the main character is actually putting yourself in solitary confinement.
And that perfectly bridges the gap between the internal emotional prisons we built for ourselves and the massive, exhausting societal prisons we construct and rigorously defend as a culture.
Let's dive into that societal aspect, because there's a really provocative comparison we need to explore here from the text. It looks at the societal perception of the hijab, the head covering worn by Muslim women. Now, in a lot of secular modern societies, the prevailing narrative is that the hijab is the ultimate symbol of oppression.
Right. It is viewed as a physical manifestation of captivity, a lack of bodily autonomy, a sign that a woman is unfree.
That's the secular baseline. But the perspective we are exploring flips this entirely by examining the hidden, unspoken captivity of modern corporate culture. There were conversations documented with non-Muslim women working in high-level corporate environments.
And they were asked a very simple question.
Yeah, they were asked, what is the hardest part of your job?
And you would naturally expect the answer to be the workload, the complex spreadsheets, the high-stakes strategy meetings, the late hours.
Exactly, the actual work. But no, several of them said with complete sincerity that the hardest part of their job was simply getting ready.
The preparation for the daily performance.
Yes. The immense, crushing daily pressure to apply exactly the right amount of makeup. Not too much so you look frivolous, but not too little so you look tired. The pressure to style their hair perfectly, to dress in a very specific, highly curated way just to be taken seriously.
To be seen as professional.
Exactly. To avoid being marginalized in meetings or to have any viable chance at upward mobility. If they do not conform to this highly specific, unwritten, constantly shifting aesthetic code, they are penalized financially and socially.
What is so fascinating about this juxtaposition is the profound cognitive dissonance of modern society. I mean, the modern corporate worker looks at the woman in the hijab and says, why do you choose to be unfree? Why do you submit to an ancient dress code? I feel so sorry for you.
Yeah.
Yet that same corporate worker is waking up 2 hours early every single morning to perform an exhausting, expensive, and mandatory aesthetic ritual just to survive the visual judgment of her middle management colleagues.
It is an agonizing irony. Secular society looks at religious submission and calls it captivity, while it forces its own people into a brutal, daily, theatrical performance just to pay the rent and buy groceries. So the fundamental question becomes, who is actually free?
Is it the woman who meticulously dresses to satisfy the arbitrary, ever-changing, often hypersexualized gaze of a corporate hierarchy?
Or is it the woman who opts out of that gaze entirely?
In this cultural captivity, this surrender to the gaze, it extends far beyond the workplace. It infects our personal lives, our celebrations. Look at the phenomenon of the Instagram standard wedding.
Oh, this is the perfect example. The wedding industry is a prison industrial complex of its own.
We have collectively created these absurd artificial cinematic standards for what a milestone event must look like. A wedding can no longer just be two people committing to each other in front of their loved ones.
No, it must be perfectly curated.
It must be flawlessly aesthetic. The lighting must be golden hour. The drone footage must be sweeping.
And what happens when a slight deviation occurs? What happens when the reality of life intrudes on the curated image? Say, the flowers are a slightly different shade of peach than the Pinterest board. Or, heaven forbid, it rains.
Or the caterer is 10 minutes late.
It's the worst day of my life. Complete psychological and emotional collapse.
We've all seen it. People sobbing uncontrollably, screaming at their families, ruining relationships over napkin colors. Why? Why the hysteria?
Because they are hostages to an artificial standard.
Exactly. They're imprisoned by an image they saw on a screen, and they will burn their actual happiness to the ground just to appease the warden of public perception.
We create these brutal, unforgiving, entirely artificial standards, and then we brutally punish ourselves and everyone around us for not meeting them. We walk into a cage of our own making, lock the door from the inside, throw the key out the window, and then spend our lives complaining about how cramped it is.
And this is where the underlying philosophy we're discussing offers a radical, almost jarring alternative.
Yeah.
It argues that Islam, and honestly, this applies broadly to deep, genuine spiritual submission in many traditions, came to shatter these artificial standards.
To just break them apart.
True freedom, in this framework, isn't the ability to fulfill every desire. It isn't the ability to meet every cultural expectation or buying every product. True freedom is the evaporation of all goals except one.
The evaporation of all goals. Think about how light you would feel if 99% of the things you worry about just evaporated.
It sounds like taking off a 100-pound backpack you didn't know you were wearing.
It is the ultimate psychological relief. When all those worldly goals evaporate, the only standard that remains is, am I doing the right thing in the eyes of the divine?
Not, is this outfit popular?
Right. Not, will this career move make me rich? Not, will this vacation look good on Instagram? Just, am I acting with integrity, morality, and spiritual sincerity? When that becomes your singular standard, the opinions of society lose all their power over you. You step right out of their prison, and their judgments just bounce off you.
But this brings us to a really deep, almost terrifying realization. Because if you cut away all these worldly standards, the corporate gaze, the Instagram aesthetic, the ego's demand for respect, it leaves a massive void.
A huge vacuum.
If you stop caring about what the world thinks, what fills that space? How does one actually remain free?
The philosophy here is incredibly dense and psychologically heavy, and it's something modern people hate to hear. It posits that a human being is always a slave.
Always. There's no state of non-servitude.
Always. The concept of absolute, unattached, floating autonomy is a complete myth. You do not have the choice to be nobody's slave. You only have the choice of who or what your master will be.
I really want you to hear that. You don't have the choice to be nobody's slave. You only get to pick your master.
If you don't actively, consciously choose to submit to the divine, to Allah in the context of this text, you do not default to pure freedom. You default to becoming a slave to the world.
Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human soul. If you remove God from the throne of your heart, something else will immediately, violently take that seat.
You become a slave to fashion. You become a slave to your bank account, checking the numbers every morning like it's a vital sign. You become a slave to the political culture, outraged exactly when the algorithm tells you to be outraged.
Or, as we discussed, you become a slave to the most cruel, unforgiving master of all, your own ego.
And let me tell you, your ego is a terrible boss. It will work you to death. It will never give you a day off. It will never, ever look at you and say, you've earned enough respect today, you can rest now.
If we connect this back to the core premise of being a hostage, to serve the one is to be free of the all. Submission to the divine is the exact mechanism by which you rebel against the tyranny of the world. It is the ultimate act of defiance against a society that wants to consume you.
There's a cinematic metaphor in our notes that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. I want you to visualize this. Imagine sitting exactly where you are right now. Just feel the weight of your body in your chair or on your feet if you're walking. Imagine that you are covered in 1,000 invisible chains. Heavy iron chains.
And they are pulling you downward.
Dragging you toward darkness, toward spiritual death. Every single bad deed, every conscious act of malice, every lie you tell to protect your ego, every moment of deep selfishness, it adds a heavy link to those chains. It binds you tighter to the material world and its inevitable decay.
But, and here's the profound mechanism of freedom. Every single good act, every act of sincere goodness, every time you swallow your pride, every time you help someone without wanting credit, it shatters one of those chains.
It literally breaks a link.
Yes. So, to submit to the divine is not to put on a new set of chains. It is to systematically, deliberately take a hammer and break the chains binding you to everything else in the universe. Slavery to the divine is absolute liberation from the world.
It is a stunning inversion of how modernity views religion. Modernity looks at faith and sees a list of rules that restrict freedom. This philosophy looks at faith and sees it as the sledgehammer that shatters the oppressive, arbitrary rules of society, finally freeing the captive soul.
Oh, so we're breaking the chains with our deeds. This brings up what I found to be the most intellectually stimulating, almost mathematically complex part of this entire discussion.
I like to think of it as the economics of eternity.
That's a great way to phrase it. Because if our good deeds break the chains, does that mean we are simply buying our way out of prison?
It's a very logical conclusion to draw from what we've said so far. If I am the collateral and my deeds are the currency that breaks the chains, am I just purchasing my ticket to paradise? Is it a straight one-to-one transaction?
Right. And here is where we hit a profound theological tension, a paradox that the sources tackle head-on. On one hand, you have this verse, Ayah 38, which clearly states that every soul is held hostage and is freed only by what it has earned, by its deeds, by its sweat.
Action yields consequence. A direct, undeniable transaction. You do the work, you earn the freedom.
But on the other hand, There are very famous established hadiths, prophetic traditions, that state emphatically that no one, absolutely no one, not even the prophets themselves, enters paradise simply through their deeds. They enter only through the mercy of Allah.
So we have a tension,
Hmm.
an apparent contradiction in the spiritual physics. Are we freed by our sweat and our deeds, as the verse says, or are we freed entirely by divine mercy, as the traditions say?
I want to use a real estate analogy here because it's the only way I can wrap my human brain around the scale of this math. Let's talk about prime, ultra-luxury real estate.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about buying a sprawling penthouse in Manhattan overlooking Central Park, or a massive private chalet in the Swiss Alps.
Highly desirable, incredibly exclusive locations, properties that cost tens of millions of dollars.
Exactly. Now, for the average person listening to this, it takes immense, backbreaking, almost impossible effort to afford something like that in this limited earthly life. You might have to work 80 hours a week for 40 years, invent a product, build a company, save every single penny, and maybe, just maybe, you can afford a fraction of that property.
And what is that property, really? It is just a structure made of wood, glass, and stone that will eventually leak, require maintenance, and one day crumble into dust.
It is a temporary asset in a decaying world.
Right. So if that is what it costs to buy a decaying box of stone on Earth, how on earth could a mere 80 years of human life possibly afford eternal, unimaginable, perfect mansions in paradise? Think about our lives. They are filled with mistakes, laziness, distractions. Let's be brutally honest about our spiritual efforts. When we pray or meditate or try to connect with God, we are maybe 25% focused on a good day.
If we're lucky.
The other 75% of the time, our brain is wondering what to make for dinner or replaying an argument we had in the shower. How could that meager, flawed, distracted effort possibly be the currency that buys eternity?
The math simply doesn't work. The exchange rate is completely broken.
It is bankrupt economics. You cannot buy infinity with finite, flawed currency. It would be like trying to buy the entire continent of North America with 3 copper pennies.
So how do we resolve this tension? Because we are faced with two extreme reactions to this math. One extreme is the arrogant person who says, my deeds are amazing, I pray every day, I give to charity, I am buying my way in. We just proved that mathematically impossible.
And the other extreme is the guy, and we all have this person in our family, this strange relative.
The one who shows up at the holidays with a very specific, convenient theology.
Exactly. The guy who is living completely recklessly. Maybe he's drinking, maybe he's cheating people in business, maybe he lies constantly. And when you gently confront him about his lifestyle, he just waves his hand and says, God is merciful. Deeds don't matter. God is love. He'll forgive it all. I don't need to try.
Both of those extremes are fatal to the soul. The first, extreme believing you buy your way in, leads to arrogance and eventually crushing despair, because deep down you know you can never do enough. The second, extreme believing deeds don't matter at all, leads to apathy and spiritual corruption, because you believe your actions have no weight in the cosmos.
So what is the resolving insight? How do we balance the deeds required to free the hostage with mercy required to afford eternity? How do we make the math work?
Well, the explanation provided here is, it's honestly one of the most elegant, beautiful spiritual frameworks I have ever encountered. It explains it through the mathematical concept of the zero and the multiplier.
Wait, the zero and the multiplier? Break that down for me.
Yeah, so God is Al-Rahman, the most merciful. His mercy is the multiplier in this equation, and it is an infinite multiplier. Your deeds, your actions, your struggles, your flawed 25% focused prayers, your attempts to be a good person, they are the base number.
Base number and multiplier. Okay, I follow.
Now think about basic multiplication. If you bring a zero to the equation, meaning you make absolutely no effort, you have no sincere deeds, you just live recklessly and passively expect mercy, like the strained relative, what happens?
I mean, any multiplier applied to a zero leaves you with exactly zero. Infinite mercy times zero effort is still zero.
Wow. That completely destroys the I don't need to try because God is merciful argument.
Completely. But on the flip side, if you bring even a fraction, a deeply flawed prayer, a single sincere step forward after a lifetime of walking backward, or even just an act of kindness to an elderly Iraqi woman in a hallway in Dallas, that is a number greater than zero.
Maybe it's just 0.001.
Yeah. But Allah takes that meager, imperfect offering and applies the infinite multiplier of his mercy. And he multiplies that 0.001 into eternity.
There is a story in the research that perfectly illustrates this, and it is so moving. I want you to picture this scenario. Imagine someone who has lived a rough life, completely disconnected from faith, completely lost in the world.
A lifetime of bad choices.
Right. But in their final moments, lying on their deathbed, they feel a sudden, undeniable pull in their heart. They decide they want to pray. They want to submit. They reach out their trembling hand to get a glass of water to perform their ritual purification, their ablutions.
And before their fingers even touch the glass, their heart stops. They die.
They never prayed a single prayer in their entire life.
Not one. If it was purely about the transactional volume of deeds, they're bankrupt. They failed the test. They are a hostage forever.
But the theology says their hand reaching out, that pure intention, that micro-movement toward the divine, is a number greater than 0.
It is enough of a deed for infinite mercy to grab hold of and multiply into paradise. God does not demand perfection. He demands direction.
God does not demand perfection. He demands direction. That really is the crux of the entire human experience. It isn't about how far along the path you are. It is about which way you are facing.
Are you facing toward the light?
Are you trying to break the chains, even if your hands are weak and you keep failing? Because the very second you make the sincere effort, the multiplier engages.
Which perfectly transitions us into the final major concept we need to explore. We established at the very beginning that Ayah 38 says every soul is a hostage, held as collateral from what it has earned. But there is an exception in the very next phrase of the Quran.
Yes, except the companions of the right, Ashab al-Yamin.
So who are the exceptions to this universal hostage situation? How do you get on that list? Because if everyone is born in custody, how does anyone end up as a companion of the right?
To truly understand this, we have to look past the English translation and break down the profound linguistic meaning of the word yamin. It's often translated simply as right, as in the right hand or the right side. But in ancient Arabic, it carries much deeper, heavier connotations.
It's not just a physical direction on a compass.
No. In classical Arabic, yamin also means an oath, a vow, or a solemn pledge. The people of the yamin are not just people standing on a certain side of a room. They are the people who kept the primordial promise.
The primordial promise. Explain that, because that sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but it's a core theological tenet.
In Islamic theology, there is a concept called the fitra, the innate primordial nature of the human soul. The belief is that before we were even born on earth, before we were placed in these physical bodies and subjected to time and space, all human souls were gathered together.
Okay, a pre-eternal state.
Right. And in that pre-eternal state, our souls made a pledge. We made an oath to acknowledge and serve the divine. We recognized our Creator.
So we made a promise before the clock even started ticking. We knew the truth before we forgot it.
Precisely. So the people of the right hand, the Ashab al-Yamin, are those who live their earthly lives trying to remember and honor that ancient forgotten oath. They're the ones whose internal compass always points back to that original promise, even when they get lost.
What I love about this is how the symbolism of the right hand is practically hardwired into human psychology across the globe. This isn't just an Arabic linguistic quirk, it's a universal human truth.
Think about it. When you make a business deal, when you want to build trust with a stranger, what is the instinctual physical movement you make? You offer your right hand for a handshake.
When you stand in a courtroom anywhere in the world and you are asked to swear an oath to tell the truth, you raise your right hand.
When a national anthem plays or you want to show deep emotional sincerity to someone, you place your right hand over your heart. Across cultures, across centuries, the right hand is the universal symbol of honor, of integrity, of fulfilling your obligations and keeping your word.
So these companions of the right are the people of honor. They are the ones who took the reality of their spiritual collateral seriously and worked to pay it off.
But this brings up a vital question. We established earlier that everyone makes mistakes. Everyone adds chains to themselves. We are all flawed. So how do these people of the right hand stay free? Do they just never sin? Are they angels?
No, and that's the most beautiful part of this entire system. They aren't perfect. They fail, they stumble, they add links to their own chains. But the mechanism that saves them is Tawbah, or sincere repentance.
And the way the mechanics of Tawbah are described completely blew my mind, because it changes how we view our own darkness. I used to think repentance was just getting back to zero, like paying off a massive credit card bill. You owe $1,000, you scrape together $1,000, you pay it, and now your balance is zero.
You're neutral.
You've just erased the deficit. Right. But the spiritual economics of Tawbah are vastly different and infinitely more merciful.
Yeah.
Let's say you are $10 million in spiritual debt. You've messed up big time. You've hurt people. You've been arrogant. You've lived in the dark.
Sincere repentance doesn't just clear the debt. It doesn't just wipe the slate clean and leave you empty-handed at zero.
No, the theology states that Allah's mercy actually converts that negative 10 million into a positive 10 million.
It literally flips the sign on the ledger.
It flips the sign. I want you to really grasp the magnitude of that. Your mistakes, your sins, your deepest regrets, once you sincerely repent for them, once you feel that true agonizing remorse and change your direction, those very sins are transformed into the currency of your freedom.
It is the ultimate spiritual alchemy. Why does this happen? Because the psychological act of admitting fault, of true remorse, requires you to shatter your ego. And a shattered ego is the exact empty vessel that divine mercy rushes in to fill. The act of recognizing your darkness is what creates the light.
Your darkest moments, your biggest failures, become the very assets that buy back your soul from captivity. The things you are most ashamed of become the building blocks of your paradise, simply because you use them to find your way back to God.
It means that no matter how deep into the deficit you were born, no matter how many heavy iron chains you have wrapped around yourself through years of bad choices and addictions, your capacity for ultimate freedom is always perfectly intact.
The door of the prison isn't just unlocked. The iron bars themselves can be melted down and turned into gold.
Melted down and turned into gold. I want to bring the camera incredibly close to you right now, just you listening to this. We have covered immense ground today. We started with the terrifying, heavy realization that you are not born free. You are born as a hostage, your very soul held as collateral against your own deeds.
We looked in the mirror at the invisible prisons we willingly lock ourselves inside, the glowing screens that steal our time, the desperate addiction to validation that exhausts our minds, the daily theatrical performance of societal standards that drains our spirits.
We examine the beautiful paradox that true freedom is only ever found in singular servitude. You break the chains of a tyrannical world only by submitting to the merciful divine.
And we learned that the mathematics of eternity do not require you to be perfect. They require you to have direction. They require you to bring a number greater than zero, a single sincere effort, so that the infinite multiplier of mercy can do its miraculous work.
And we learned that through sincere return, even your deepest regrets are turned into the gold that buys your freedom.
It truly is a journey from profound existential dread to the most profound hope imaginable.
But I cannot let you go without sharing one final haunting reflection from our notes. It mentions that the verse immediately following this one, the verse right after the one about every soul being a hostage, sets up a scene that will take place in the next life. It describes a conversation across the ultimate boundary between the people of Jannah, paradise, and the people of Jahannam, hell.
A conversation between the ones who broke their chains and the ones who remain captive.
I want to leave you with this thought to mull over tonight when it's quiet. What if the ultimate agonizing tragedy of those who remain captive in the next life isn't that they were overpowered by a cruel, unforgiving warden? What if the tragedy is simply that they realized, far too late, that the door to their earthly prison was unlocked the entire time?
They possessed the currency to free themselves. Just a single sincere step, a single moment of turning toward the right direction, a single tear of genuine remorse, but they never used it.
They didn't end up in captivity because they were forced. They ended up there because, deep down, they loved their chains too much to step out into the blinding light. They preferred the familiar, manageable ache of their ego, the comfortable, numbing distraction of their screens, and the predictable applause of society over the terrifying, magnificent responsibility of true freedom.
So the only question left to answer is, who are you serving right now? Are you free, or are you just comfortably captive?